High-Tech Legion, here we are, the install portion. What I'm going to do is I'm going to install this Zotac Ion motherboard here into the top half of the Fusion here. So what we're going to do is we're going to open it up. And as you can see, there's the hard drive cages as we looked over in the overview video. But right here is where the motherboard sits. And the stand-ups are already built in, so we don't have to worry about putting those in or installing them. At the back here is where we already have the proper cover. So what we're going to do is we're going to install the I/O panel for the motherboard. Okay, and this is what the motherboard looks like outside of the box here. So this installs this way here. Right, so we're going to put this in. Okay. Let's take those tabs off. Push it into place. Alright, so now what we need to do is we need to take our motherboard, put it into position, fit it through the proper ports here, get it lined up. And there you have it. All we need to do now is install the screws, and that'll be ready to go. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a hard drive right here, install it into the hot swappable bay. Like so. And we're just going to screw those into the bottom. That slides in and that'll be done. Alright, so we went ahead and screwed in the motherboard, and we also attached the hard disk drive to the cage itself. We put in 4 screws that were included. Now all you need to do, slide that in, lock it into position, and you're done. For the build on top here, I don't need an optical drive, so I won't be installing one. There's an OS on this drive already, so we're good to go in that respect. We're just gonna hook up the cables for the power and SATA and data, all that good stuff to the motherboard, and the top install will be done. And then we'll move on to the lower portion of the AZZA Fusion 4000. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the power supply that goes in. If you're installing 2 systems like this here, you have one up top and you're going to be installing one on the bottom. Obviously you have the mini ITX up top is where it fits, but talking about the PSU specifically, if you look, there is 3 holes. Here, let me just zoom in here. Give me half a second. Okay. So if you look, there's 3 holes rather than your typical 2. Now the reason that is that this doesn't fit a regular sized PSU. You're going to need a small 4-factor PSU, something you'd stick in a small FF chassis or something along that lines. So what we're going to do is we're just going to leave this install as it is. You can't put 2 systems in there, it does fit. You have the ITX board, you can put an extra graphics card in the slot here because they have a slot on the side here. The hard drives are in, optical drives, all that kind of stuff. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to continue on with the bottom half of the build, but just going forward you need to have a small form factor power supply if you're installing 2 systems. Alright, so I got the motherboard standoffs put in. I have just installed the motherboard, and I have measured the hoses for the water cooling loop. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mount my 360 radiator in the top above the server board I have in there, and we're going to install some more water, the reservoir and the pump in the bottom part of the case here. So I'm going to go ahead and install the radiator in the top. I'll just show you where that goes. Which is right up there in the louvered section. So what I have to do is I'm going to take the top off, which is some thumb screws here. Okay, the top comes off really easily. What you do is you take out the 2 thumb screws at the back, slide this back, and it comes right off. Nice and easy. Cool. That's off. Now, if we lift it up, you can see that you can fit a quad rad up top here. We're just going to put a triple in the top and mount the fans from underneath here with the rad beneath that. Alright, so I got my rad. I got 3 Noctua NF F12 PWM fans. Nice and silent. Keep things running cool. And what we're going to do is we're going to line them up on top of the rad, like so. Right, and we're going to slide it underneath here and up into position. Alright, we're going to get things going with the first screw. Line it up. Well, alright, anyways, I'll finish installing this and we'll come back. Okay, so we got the radiator and the 3 fans installed up top here. So basically at the top of the case we're done. So we can put the top back on. Just slides on, and slides forwards and locks into position, and then you just put the 2 thumb screws back in the back. And that's the top of the chassis, or the radiator portion of the install at the top of the chassis completed. You can see that the louvers still work. So now what we're going to do is we're going to install the reservoir and the water pump, and then run all the tubing. Alright, what I've done here is I've installed the water pumps. The housing I have here matched right up to the fan mounts that would go here right in front of the power supply. Nice and solid, they're in there, they're not going anywhere. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to mount the reservoir up in here. I'm going to redirect the cables coming through this grommet up behind the tray here. I'm going to mount my res up here. So what this is going to do is we have the rad up top returning water into the reservoir, which is gravity fed into the pump, and the pump goes through the block, and that'll be your entire loop. So I'm going to install the reservoir, which is a SwiftTech micro res, and I'll put that in. I'll come back, I'll show you what we did, and then I'll hook up all the tubing. Alright, so I moved the wires from the grommet, like I said, and I fed them behind the motherboard tray here. There's a big hole up top, and then I mounted the reservoir. It's in there nice and solid. Excuse me. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to run all the tubing up to the reservoir on the top, down to the res, to the pump, to the block. And that shouldn't take more than 5 minutes to get all the proper lengths and everything. Pretty simple stuff. We just got to make sure all our connections are nice and snug and do a fill up the res or the system, and then check for air bubbles and that kind of thing. Okay, so I hooked up the two hoses, the inlet and the outlet, to the radiator. As you can see in the top here, it's completely installed up top now. And if you come down here, you can see the reservoir is installed. And if I zoom in, you can see the top compression fitting on the reservoir is on and attached to the radiator above it. And there is the return line going to the CPU water block, and the inlet on the CPU water block goes down to the pump. The only hose left now is to connect the reservoir to the pump itself. Once we've done that, I will install the power supply and fill the loop. And once the loop is filled, I will hotwire or jumper the PSU, hook up the water pumps, and do a pressure test on the system to make sure there's no leaks before I plug in the motherboard. Okay, so we got all the lines filled up, or put on. We got the res filled. The system is running dry right now. We're just doing a leak test. If you look to the top here, you can see the QDC I have attached here, which is the fill port for the system. Right, no drips, no fuss, no muss. Nice and easy. You can probably hear the system running. That's because there's air in the system and it's going to work itself out. So we'll just close the top. And you can see the res up there, the QDC on the side. Well, the hose, the fill port, which goes up to the QDC. There's the pump. After we let it run for 24 hours, we'll finish installing the system, and we'll come back and finish this install up and finish up the review. Thanks for watching. Okay, so the system is still flushing out, so I've decided to continue on and install some other components. So what I'm going to install up top here, after checking the cable length of the PSU I have, is this Lamptron fan controller. This is pretty straightforward. Nothing too fancy here. Just slides in to the bay. Once you get it in position, then you simply come over to this side here, and these little knobbies here, you can see the hole here. Let me see here. There. Maybe. You can see the hole right here on the fan controller. So what you're going to do is you're going to slide this over and then just push it in and give it a twist, and that'll lock the fan controller into position. So hopefully everything kind of lines up here. Push it in and give it a twist. There we go. Alright, so we'll come over here. And the fan controller is locked in. Pretty simple, straightforward, easy to use. Next I'm going to be installing a optical drive, and I'm probably going to put it up here above the fan controller or just below the fan controller. I'm going to check out all the cable lengths for the data cables and stuff, and we'll come back and get that done. Okay, so I checked the cable lengths, and I've opted to stick the optical drive in the bottom portion of the tower in the top bay. This is really straightforward, kind of like the top. Just make sure that your little red knobs here are set to the back. Slide it in. There we are. And then just line up the holes. There we are. And just twist. You can hear it click. Just twist them in place. Twist until they stop. And that's it. Nice and solid. In there, isn't moving. Now for the front, obviously we're going to use the hot swappable hard drive caddies. Right? So slide your drive in here, screw it in from the back, and just slide it back into position. Pretty simple stuff. So we'll get our drive into this caddy and then show you where we've mounted the screws and get it put in. Alright, so we got the hard drive mounted into the caddy. Use 4 screws. Simply slide it into the hot swappable hard drive bay. Push till it clicks, and that's it, you're done. Just got to make sure the Molex power and the data cables on the other side are all hooked up, and you're good to go. Okay, last but not least, we got the power supply in, and now the only last piece of gear we need to put in is the GPU. So easy thumb screws here, which is handy. Now, they seem like they're 9 miles long, so let's just get these out of the way. That's one. Two. Just plug it in. Alright, we get this plugged in here. Make sure we don't catch any of the any of the tubing. Plug it in, and then we just put in the thumb screws and we're done.